Buongiorno, good morning, everybody. Today we talk about the sixth commandment. I want to start with this picture. So, look at this. What is it? A chair, okay? But really, it is not just a chair. It is a work of art, and it is all covered with Swarovski crystals. Okay, and it is in a museum in Verona. And maybe you know what happened. Maybe you saw this video about what happened last year. Two tourists walk in. They wait for the guard to leave. They want a photo. So he sits down, and now the chair is this. And so we can laugh about that. When I was looking, I said, "Oh," but then I was thinking, "Well, Francesco, maybe sometimes you do the same with things." Sometimes we look at things and we do not see their real value. We only ask, what can I get from this? Why? Because we forget who made it. And the problem is that sometimes we can do also the same with people. We can forget that every one of us carries the image of God, our Creator. The sixth commandment says, "You shall not murder," but it is not the first time that God is talking about this topic in the Bible. Before Sinai, God already was spoken about this with Noah. I don't know if you remember, but after the flood, there is this verse in the Bible about this topic. It is in Genesis 9, verses 6. "Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image." So this is the foundation. The value of human life does not come from what man does. It comes from what God has done. Human dignity cannot be given or taken away by people. It is not something to be used. So this commandment is not only just a defense of life. It is the protection God places around His image in man. The Hebrew word that we translate as murder is ratzak, and it does not refer to every form of killing. It does not speak of war or capital punishment. It speaks of the unlawful taking of a human life. It speaks of murder. So we can think of this commandment as a single sign pointing to the final result: murder. Do not cross that line. And the commandment really does say this. But if we stop here, we only understand half of it. Murder is the final act of something that starts much earlier. So imagine a road, and at the end of this road, you can see the sign, murder. God is looking at everything that leads there to that point. What forms in the heart? Because some sins do not appear suddenly, they grow. And we see this clearly already in the Old Testament law. I love this passage in Deuteronomy 19, verses 5. It's talking about something that could happen. So we can read there. As when someone goes into the forest with his neighbor to cut wood, and his hand swings the axe to cut down a tree, and the head slips from the handle and strikes his neighbor so that he dies, he may flee to one of these cities and live. So, an accident, no intent to kill. For this, God has set up cities of refuge, safe places to run to, not to escape justice, but to make sure the case was heard first. So these, in some way, stop people from going out and getting revenge on their own. God had a system, a fair one, and then the text tells us something important in the previous verse. So we can read in verse 4, the second part of the verse says, if anyone kills his neighbor unintentionally, without having hated him in the past. And when I read this verse, I said, wow, very interesting that God is talking about this. Why? Because God doesn't just look at what happened. He looks at what was already in the heart. Was there hate before? There is a verse that in the Bible that we can connect in some way with this image. Solomon in Proverbs gives us a very clear picture. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. So stop for a moment on this image. I think of those cities of refuge without walls. Anyone could get in. The avenger could reach you without no obstacle. There was no protection. Why? Because the walls were what made it a refuge. And without them, it was exposed like everywhere else. And so if we connect the two different passages, we can see that Solomon is saying a person without self-control is exactly like that. When anger comes, when hurt comes, when someone wrongs you, if the heart has no walls, everything gets in. Thoughts, resentment, impulses, and nothing stops them. So, without having hated him before, is not just about intention. It describes a heart that was still guarded, not yet invaded. And it is very important because the real problem is not only what we do. It is the state of the heart before anything happens. And that is where the road begins. So close the sign murder. We have planned hate. Hate that plans does not happen in a moment. It comes from before. There is a wound that is not let go. And there is something that stays in the heart, kept and growing. And before hate, there is bitterness. If a wound is not brought to God, it does not stay where it is. Slowly, it begins to grow. Sometimes slowly, sometimes it goes faster. And it changes the way we see the other person, the way we think about them, and the way we speak to them and about them. We can read about this in Matthew 5, from 21 to 22. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. And whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. So Jesus is not changing the commandment, is showing how deep it already goes. And it doesn't start with a final act. It starts with what comes before, with anger, with contempt, with what grows inside and then comes out through words. So the words that are written here, the meaning is you are nothing, or they throw the whole person away. But Jesus is not just giving a list of bad words. Don't say this, don't say that. He's showing a heart that has already put the other person below. A heart that has made itself the judge. And we have to remember that every person carries the image of God, and sin cannot erase that image. But bitterness makes us act as if it is not there. The hand has not moved yet, but in the heart, the other person has already been made smaller, already treated as someone worthless. So the sixth commandment is not just a rule. In some way, it is a mirror. It shows us that the problem of a murder is not far away. It is already inside. And if the problem is inside, we know that no external change is enough. we need a salvation that reaches our heart. And then we arrive to the sign number 2. Before bitterness, there is held in anger. And anger begins as a reaction. It is not in itself a mature sin. Paul himself says in Ephesians 4:26, "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger." So the problem is not feeling anger, okay? The problem is what we do with it. When we keep it inside, when we go back to it, when we give it space instead of letting it go. Anger that stays inside does not stay still. It works. It hardens. It becomes bitterness. So we don't have to keep it. We don't have to give it time to grow. But why does the heart decide to hold it? Why does it not let it go? We have to think about the different situations where that can make us angry. What happens in you? Okay, we know that we do not all react the same way. Some people explode right away. You know, red face, okay? Others go quiet, so explosion is inside. Others feel anger, arrive slowly, okay? But one thing is clear, that the first reaction, the physical one, is brief, okay? So that is not the problem. The problem is what we decide to do with it after. The Bible shows us two kinds of anger. The first one defends someone else or something that is right and true. Jesus in the temple, Paul with Peter. In these cases, anger is not about the self, it is about something bigger. The second kind of anger defends the self. It arises when someone touches our pride, our will, our need to be in control. And this is the anger Jesus is talking about. I want to show you this verse in James 1:14. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. So sin does not come only from outside. It comes from what the heart is already defending inside. So the reaction arrives, and in that moment, something in the heart decides. Do I hold on to this, or do I let it go? So, if there is something in us that matters more than God, we will hold onto that anger. Because something inside us says, you should not have done this to me. She cannot treat me this way. I do not accept this. So anger is born in a moment, but when we hold onto it, it becomes bitterness. Bitterness becomes hate, and hate, if it finds the moment, becomes action. This is why Jesus does not only say, stop the hand. He says, go down to the heart. Heart. Sorry, I'm having problem with the... So what is James? Okay, you are my... Okay. So there is a story in the Bible that shows exactly this. Joab is one of David's commanders. And during a battle, Abner had killed Joab's brother. So it was a real wound, a real wrong. And we can understand how hard it could have been. The problem is that Joab does not let it go, does not bring it to God. He keeps it inside. He goes back to it. He holds onto it. And nothing visible happens, but inside something is growing. And later, when Abner returns to Hebron, we read in 2 Samuel 3:27. When Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside into the midst of the gate to speak with him privately. So they were just speaking. And there he struck him in the stomach so that he died for the blood of Asahel, his brother. So we know that that action did not begin in that moment. It came from far away. First, there was a wrong desire to defend his own blood, his own honor. Then, held in anger, never brought to the Lord. Then, bitterness. We changed the way he looked at Abner. And then hate, which waited for the right moment. Then, the final act. So, Joab was a city without walls. Everything had entered. Nothing had been stopped. No one wakes up in the morning thinking they are on the road toward murder. And yet Jesus says that the road begins much earlier than we imagine. So the question is not only, have I reached the last sign? We have many different questions that we can have. Where am I on this road right now? What I'm holding onto? What I'm growing inside? Which wound am I letting become bitterness? Who have I already lowered in my heart? Which desire am I defending more than God? And I know it's not easy to think about this. But we can also try to see if there are things that are happening in our life. Maybe in our head we are thinking always about something. We are angry for words or things that happened against us. Maybe there is a person you can look in the eye. It could be also here, in the church. When you see that person, you start to do another street, another, how you say, when you choose. Or you still tell that story, always, and the anger is still there, fresh like it happened yesterday. You say you have forgiven, but before God, you know you haven't. And when that person stumbles, when things go wrong for them, somewhere inside you, inside us, happens. There is a small satisfaction. You know what I'm talking about. The Bible knows this very well. Proverbs 24:17. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles. God sees even that. The small movement of the heart, the one we try to hide even from ourselves. And Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, tells us where it leads. Why? Because we think that judgment comes at the end, after the extreme act, after blood has been shed. But Jesus says, no, he doesn't give us one image of judgment. He gives us three, as we read before. Local court, then you have the council, the highest court in Israel, and then when you call in fool, you have the fire of hell. That is the final judgment of God. So three levels: local, supreme, and eternal. So Jesus takes these three courts, the ones used for murder, and moves them. He doesn't apply them to the final act. He applies them to what comes before. So we have to remember this, that anger is not a secret problem. It goes to court. Contempt is not just rudeness and what we carry in the heart that goes before God. So while I was preparing the message, I was saying, okay, Francesco, you are there. No one of us is outside these three levels. So wrong desire, if you let it grow, leads there. Held in anger, if you host it, leads there. Bitterness, hate, and final act, the same. So this is not only a problem for criminals. It is a problem for every human heart left to itself. So the hard question is, how many people have we killed this week in our heart? When someone cut you off driving, when someone looked down on you because of where you come from, when they got the credit and you did the work, when someone you trusted went behind your back, and I can continue. The list is so long. So we are not talking about murder in the common sense. We are talking about what Jesus calls murder. And this is also a task for the church. A place where no one is left alone with their anger, their wound, their bitterness. But it is also the church a place where it is so easy be in that road. It is so easy to have situations where we can have bitterness on each other, misunderstandings, problems, and sometimes we don't want to talk anymore with that person. We start to judge. We prefer to talk with another one instead of going to talk directly to that person. And things, and we let this feeling grow inside of us. And so we can also decide not to come anymore, or do the wrong thing about this. We cancel culture. We cancel that person. But when we cancel someone, we are killing that person. And I know that sometimes it's not easy, especially when we see that, that word, that thing is going really deep in our life, in our heart. But the person who carries hate thinks they are holding it. In reality, it is holding them. They cannot sleep. We overreact to small things. We begin to see enemies everywhere. The body gets tired. The soul gets cold. And so a rule is not enough. We need a new heart. And here in the Sermon of the Mount takes us further. At the end of that sermon, we can read in Matthew 7:24. No, sorry, here. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. So the foundation is not a rule. The foundation is him. And he is not only beneath us. He is in us and around us. Not just the ground we stand on, but the walls that protect us when the storm comes from outside. And without him, we know, the heart stays exposed. Everything holds until a real wound arrives, a real wrong, real pressure, and then the house falls. So we don't need only a commandment to stop us. We need Christ to remake us. And here we also must see something we would never have seen on our own. That road, wrong desire, anger, bitterness, hate, was not only walked against other people. It was walked against Christ. Jesus was hated, despised, accused, condemned, killed. So the sixth commandment is not only something we break. It is something that was broken against the Son of God. And it is right there, at the lowest point of that road, that we can hear what was said in Romans 5:8. But God shows His love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were still sinners. Not after we changed, not after we got our act together. So that means that you don't have to get better before you come to Christ. Because sometimes we can say, no, I need to be better. I need to, I feel to be a better person, to be accepted by God. But Jesus came to seek and save the lost. And the one who comes to Him, He will never cast out. We can finish with Paul in Colossians 3, 9 to 10, sorry. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have put off the old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of its Creator. Look at this. Renewed after the image of its Creator. We saw that sin defaces that image. Hatred deforms it. Bitterness darkens it. But the work of Christ is not only justification, it is also renewal. Not only forgiveness for what you have done, but restoration of what sin has broken in you. And I'm so grateful how grace restores our sight. How through God we can really see the image of God in the person who hurt you. To remember that God is not finished with them, and He is not finished with you either. And so, the sixth commandment, we can see that is not only a fence, it is a mirror. And when you look into it honestly, you see someone who needs grace. So, if today you, like me, recognize yourself on that road Do not excuse it. Do not defend it. Because the problem is that when we are there, we go to use that anger, we go to use that feelings against other people. But Jesus is saying, no. Turn your back, and you have to bring all your suffering, all your hate, all the things that you have inside to Him, and ask Him to restore you, to help you. Bring it to Christ. He forgives what you have done, and He changes what you cannot change on your own. And it's incredible when you don't have anymore that burden. When you give everything to God, you can see again people in the eyes, you can talk with them, you can see how God is good and how He can help you not to be stopped there, but you can continue to grow and to live through Him and in Him.